expertise is the art of reinvention. And people like to throw that term all around a lot, especially during economic downturns and lots of crisis. So no customers, reinvent your business, or the students are dropping out in droves, let's just reinvent the education system. Or you no longer look good posing in a thong. Maybe you should reinvent your career and be governor of California or something like that. What is reinvention, and why do some people and systems reinvent so much more easily than others? What's behind all that? Well, I think a really great metaphor for reinvention, it's kind of similar to Dan, is the idea of the forest fire. You see, many forest managers, for years, they would burn down, or they would actually suppress natural wildfires. And then what they discovered was this would create huge, devastating fire, especially, say, in the American Southwest, because they were putting out the little fires, because nature is wise, you know what I mean? Nature knows that if the trees get too big, they create this canopy that doesn't let the sunshine down onto the forest floor. And on the forest floor, you will have the food that the animals will eat. And so if you're messing with that, you're messing with the whole ecosystem. So I like that metaphor, and I think metaphors really open up the creative mind in a really great way. And so often I ask myself, if I'm feeling really stuck and I'm not getting where I need to go, I ask myself, what needs to burn down? What assumption do I have, or perspective, that needs to burn away so I can create space and presence for the new to come forth? And I think at the source of it all, reinvention is being tied into the natural creative cycle of your life, in your organization's life, so that you can let go and create space. And I think it precedes all learning, and I think we need to be teaching reinvention in our schools so that people are prepared. And if you don't teach it in the schools, what you have are adults who are lost in franticness and massive, always productivity, not going into the winter of change sometime where you need to let go of the old and let the soil rest for a while until you can create the new. And I do a lot of surveying in organizations, and I often ask this question. I said, what do you think is the difference between someone in an organization who totally is happy and centered during massive hurricane of change, as opposed to the person who gets freaked out because somebody moved the stapler from one end of the office to the other? And you know what people say? I don't know, drugs? They have no idea why some people are totally thriving in change. And you know what it is, really? It's the little habits, the habits of letting go and presencing yourself so that you know what to do next. So let me tell you a story. This was a mother and a daughter I worked with years and years ago, and the little girl was really great in kindergarten, typical kind of situation. She got into the public school system, sitting in rows, reading out of books, not able to move, and her behavior became quite erratic. And she had signs of dyslexia start to come in, and so they took her out of the class, put her into the special learning class, and she got ostracized by the other kids, and I think they used to call that class the dummies class. And the mother was upset because she thought, well, this isn't helping my daughter at all. What can we do? Is there another alternative? And they just said, no, that's it. That's our only alternative. I'm sorry about that. And this mother wouldn't take that sitting down, and she, along with my help, found an alternative for this girl. She actually even helped start some alternatives so that she got her into a program where the students got to co-create their learning environment with the teachers. So there was things we had to learn, but how do you want to learn it? And of course, if you give kids the option, they'll choose something really experiential and really creative. So they started doing things like creating a vegetable garden for a semester, or going backpacking on the West Coast Trail, or creating a screenplay about the life of Galileo and filming it. And so this student very much came alive in that school, and her grades went way up, and she was able to finish high school and go to university and become an entrepreneur and write several books and speak at conferences all over the world. And this young student was me. So this is my geeky grade 8 photo. Me in my little Levi shirt. Levi shirts were as popular back then for girls as Snooki boots are now. And this was a really amazing environment for me. I loved going to school. I loved it. I came alive there, and I loved my teachers. These are some of the great teachers that were there at the time, and they made learning a really fun adventure. And we co-created together, and we called them by their first names. So they were friends rather than authority figures only. And they made me feel responsible for my learning, which I can tell you was a little tough at times, and not for every student, because some students didn't make it through that. But for me, you know, it made me a lifelong learner, and more importantly, it made me a self-motivated one. And, you know, here's a photo of my mom. And I show you the picture of my mom because I had a mom that went to bat for me and found something for me, and not every kid has that. You know what I mean? And they do not have the alternatives in the communities that they are. And I could have easily turned out like the other girl in the dummies class named Linda, who was amazingly creative. You know, she was funny and she was really good at portraiture, amazing art skills. But, you know, in traditional schooling, there was one way to learn, and she was a very slow reader, and that was not her way. So she dropped out of high school. She got pregnant by 15. And by the age of 20, she had died of a cocaine overdose. And it's such a waste, you know, because the Torrance test for creativity, they, for 50 years, have been tracking kids who score high for creativity actually contribute more back to society than kids who score high for IQ. And you know, both of us were slow readers, but what I did, because I wanted to go to university and I was taught how to reinvent and adapt to myself, that I knew I couldn't do the big reading list. So I went to the library for the blind at UBC, and I actually had to pretend I was blind to go in and get a book. And that's how I would listen to the audiobooks, and that's how I made it through. And I just adapted. I co-created my curriculum with my professors because I knew in essence what I wanted to do. I wanted to create creative learning environments and in organizations. And so I think all kids, at their essence, they know what they want to do, given the right circumstances. And, you know, I think we should let them co-create their learning because who knows what they'll be doing? Who knows what kind of careers they'll have? But at our essence, we know how we want to contribute to the world. So let me do a quick test for you. The Torrance test missed something important. 2 totally different jobs. Office manager. What are 3 qualities that most people think you need to be a good office manager? Just shout them out. Organized. Hardworking. Yeah. Interpersonal skills, detail-oriented, organized, usually efficient, goal-oriented. What about novelist? Something totally creative. I've done both these careers myself. What would you say? Confident? Self-driven, yes. Creative. Yes. Persistent, yes, definitely. Imaginative, creative writing skills, self-disciplined. Let's switch the job titles, shall we? Do you think you need to be organized, efficient, and goal-oriented to be a novelist? Yes, of course you do. And how about imaginative, creative writing skills and self-disciplined, say, to be a novelist? Yes. So, you know, it's not really the task, it is the mindset that we bring to it. And these are the photos that my clients send me about how they keep the creative mindset going at work, because if people are having fun and they're playing and being creative and in their bodies, then they're in the creative mindset that let them be constantly reinventing themselves in their organizations. And I was sort of like that student or that girl that Ken Robinson talked about in his talk about Gillian Lynn, the great choreographer. I had to move to think. And a lot of people need to move to think. And so we need these kind of things going on in organizations so people can really be their creative self, because we are all totally massively creative, and we're discovering that now with the internet, with all these great things people are creating. But if you neglect your natural creative skills, what can happen?
Rot.
Yeah, you go a little moldy. You can go quite moldy, and I think it shows up as health problems, as mental health problems. I think we see it in teens, teen suicide, teen bullying and drugs. And, there's so much evidence that you give kids, take some disadvantaged kids and you have them tango dance or play the violin or get to do improv every day after school. All of a sudden, a lot of that stuff goes away. And one of the great things that it taught me as an adult is to take my life challenges and turn it into a creative outlet. I think that's something I really got from University Hill High School, which is where I went. 12 years ago, my father died, and after he died, I found a box of mementos and photos and documents indicating he had changed his identity a couple of times in his life. And one of those identities was really hard to look into. And my whole journey of that was quite challenging, and so I actually decided and fascinating, so I decided to turn it into a book, and it became a full-length novel, and it totally reinvented my life. It was better than 7 years of therapy, quite frankly, and it's something that has inspired other people to write books. They read my book, they're writing books about their family and recreating their relationships with their family out of it. So, let's bring more sunshine down to the forest floor. My mom died about 20 years ago, so she wasn't around that long, but she did get to see me, speak in front of a group of 1,400 students at 25 years old just before she died. And, that was pretty amazing for a mom who didn't know whether her daughter would make it. So I want to give tribute to her and all the educators and the people and the mothers, the fathers, and all the people who reach out a hand and create some alternatives for the students who may not be making it in the traditional system so that they can contribute their gifts to the world too. Thank you.